Okay, Assalamualaikum everyone. Today we're gonna learn the last approach in our syllabus, which is learning approach. And the first study we're gonna do is Bandura, Ross, and Ross. Okay, so it's about aggression. Okay, now learning approach. Do we live to learn or do we learn to live? Now, think about what you have done today. Apart from basic biological activities like breathing or blinking, almost everything you have done you will have learned. For example, reading or learning how to eat when you reach 6 months old. Okay. Now, I know when you think about learning, the first thing that probably occurs to you is trying to learn your syllabus. For example, what you're doing now, learning psychology. In fact, this is actually just a memory task. When we say learning, we refer to acquisition of new behaviors. Okay, for example, riding a bike, okay, or learning how to use YouTube right now. Okay, so in this approach, we will be looking at changes that occur in learning, how we can measure changes in behavioral potential, and how the environment contributes to learning. We will consider repeated exposure to stimuli, rewards, and role models, each of which is a feature of the environment. Okay, now looking back over your childhood, think about three different behaviors that you can definitely say you learned rather than being purely the product of maturation. So I would say walking is a product of maturation. Okay, so what is it that you have learned? Okay, for example, driving. Have you learned how to drive? Okay, consider how you might have learned them. Did you discover them for yourself, or did something or someone in the environment help you? For some people, they learn how to smoke. Okay, did they just learn it and figured they saw a cigarette and they learn how to do it? Or if they have an older brother to help them, teach them how to smoke properly. That is such a bad example. Why am I using a bad behavior as an example? Okay, moving on. So these are the assumptions of learning approach. Conditioning help to explain changes in behavior, as well as social learning helps to explain changes in behavior. Now, conditioning. I'm sure you have heard I have explained to you about conditioning, okay? So conditioning is a behavioral process whereby a response becomes more frequent or more predictable in a given environment as a result of reinforcement, with reinforcement typically being a stimulus or reward for a desired response. So for example, you study hard and you get a good grade, um and I usually sorry and I would give you money. Let's say if you score A in my class. Okay? So because of this reinforcement, your response just now, which is studying, getting good grades, becomes more frequent because you know there's a reinforcement. Okay? Now, there are two types of conditioning. First is classical conditioning. Second is operant conditioning. Classical conditioning is a process that involves creating an association between a naturally existing stimulus and a previously neutral one. For example, pairing a previously neutral stimulus, such as the sound of a bell, with an unconditional stimulus, for example, the taste of food. Now, I don't know if Pavlov rings any bell, pun intended there. Okay. Now, so for example, when a dog sees a food, okay, whenever food comes, the bell always rings. So now, whenever he hears, if the two items, bell and the food, keeps getting paired all the time, okay, so they have associated the two together. So now, if they hear a bell, they will think of food and they will salivate. Okay, um, I think I've explained to you this before. Okay, now second one is operant conditioning. It focuses on either reinforcement or punishment to increase or decrease a behavior. Through this process, an association is formed between the behavior and the consequences of that behavior. So, for example, um, again, if you get good grades, I give you money. Okay, so now that will more likely increase the behavior of you getting good grades because you know there's a reinforcement at the end. Or let's say you didn't submit your homework on time, and I make you stand on a chair, so that's a punishment. So that will most likely decrease the behavior of not submitting work, okay, because you know there's a punishment, okay, if you do that behavior. Okay, this is summary of those: classical conditioning and operant conditioning. So classical conditioning associate an involuntary response and a stimulus. Operant conditioning associate a voluntary behavior and a consequence. So for example, um, by chance, let's say this mouse clicks on this, okay, and suddenly food comes out. Now he knows that if he clicks on this, food will come out, which is the reinforcement. So the likelihood of him clicking this lever here will be increased, okay, because he knows there are enforcements at the end, okay. The second one, social learning helps explain changes in behavior. So what is social learning? Social learning theory suggests that social behavior is learned by observing and imitating the behavior of others. So as a kid, we are more likely to copy the behavior of our parents. Yes. Okay. Um, right now, for you, when you're a teenager, possibly it's a friend. You copying this the behavior of your friend. Okay. So there are three studies from this approach as usual. So the first one is Bandura et al., which is based on social learning theory, okay, and looks at the effect of children's behavior on of seeing an adult behaving aggressively. Will they copy the behavior of an adult that is behaving aggressively? If they do, then that's social learning theory, which is behaviors learned by observing and imitating the behavior of others. The second one is Saavedra and Silverman, button phobia. Yes, it's about a kid who has a phobia of buttons. Okay, so which is a case study of a young boy with a phobia of buttons and the use of classical conditioning to help reduce his fear and disgust. So here we will look at how classical conditioning helps to explain changes in behavior, which is here reducing their fear. Okay. And the final study of the syllabus will be Pepperberg, which is about parrot, okay, which explores the comprehension of object categories by a parrot, which was trained through social learning and operant conditioning. Now, so for example, mm, I know if you watch movies, okay, there are dogs who are trained, and usually if they do a behavior, they get a treat at the end. So I would say that they were training the dogs using operant conditioning, which is if they do that behavior, they will get a treat, which is a reinforcement, which will more likely increase the behavior of that behavior. What did I say? Increase the likelihood of that behavior happening again. Okay. So let's focus on our first study, Bandura, Ross, and Ross, which is transmission of aggression through imitation of aggressive models. So now, if you think about it, what makes a child aggressive? Have you encountered a very aggressive child? Okay, someone who likes to kick, punch, throw things, or say things. Okay, now what makes them like that? What makes a child aggressive? Now, the very famous debate is whether it is caused by nature or nurture. So, are they naturally aggressive because it's in their genes? Because due to genetics, so if their family is someone who is aggressive, they are more likely to pass down that genetics, okay, the genes, to make the child aggressive as well. Or is it something to do with gender? Okay, who are more aggressive, men or women? Men. Is it because of their hormones, testosterone? Is that what's making them aggressive? Or there's a new discovery that it's about neurotransmitter dopamine. So dopamine is responsible for movement, for mood, motivation and behavior. Now, what they found was in this study, if a person has a lower capacity to synthesize dopamine in the brain, they are more likely to act with aggression while playing a competitive game. Because so it's something to do with dopamine. Okay, they are not they have a lower capacity to synthesize dopamine. Okay, so they are not synthesizing dopamine enough, so which makes them which makes them aggressive. Okay. Now, or is it caused by nurture? So did they learn it? Is it from the environments? Are the parents aggressive Okay, so they're copying the behavior of the parents, or they're watching media. Okay, nowadays, if you look at social media, there are a lot of aggressive videos being shown around. Okay, or movies, or WWE. I don't know if you know that. Okay, so wrestling. Okay, so they learn it from there. Okay, so it's always a debate, but in this study, we are gonna focus on how aggression is learned. Okay, nurture. Now, so looking at social learning theory, it would suggest that aggression is learned from the environment through observation. Okay, so from here, for example, me social media, so they are observing the aggression, and then later on they will imitate. Okay, now why do children copy adults? Now, immediate social setting, for example, at home, makes a child imitate what he or she is watching. So in a school, that's the social setting, so you are more likely to imitate your friends. Okay, so here, but we're gonna focus on parents, kids. So we're gonna focus on at home. Okay, social setting at home. The observation of a behavior could lead the child to acquire a new response that he or she could reproduce independently. So for example, here he is copying the dad. So when the dad is not around, he will try to copy this behavior, doing learning how to skate independently. Okay, so if this imitative learning occurred, it could arise in response to observing either aggressive or non-aggressive. So let's say when the dad is playing, he's very non-aggressive with it. He skates and everything, so he will more likely to reproduce a non-aggressive behavior. But let's say the dad falls off the skateboard, and he gets angry and he slams the skateboard on the floor, and the child watches that. Okay, so there is a high likelihood, if that happens to the child again when he's alone, when the dad is not around, he will copy the same behavior. Okay, so children are also differentially rewarded for their copying. In general, boys are rewarded for behavior considered to be sex appropriate. So if he was aggressive, if he was manly, if he was showing strength, okay, copying the dad, they are more likely to get rewarded. Oh, that's my boy. Okay, that's how boys should be. Okay, and punished for inappropriate ones. So let's say he copies the mom, and the mom is wearing lipstick, and he wears lipstick. Okay, so it's inappropriate in terms of sex appropriate. So he will get punished. Okay, now in the study, the aim is to investigate whether a child would learn aggression by observing a model and would reproduce this behavior in the absence of the model, and whether the sex of the role model was important. Are boys more likely to imitate their dad, or are they more likely to imitate their mom? As we look here, if they imitate their dad, then it will be sex appropriate. The things that their dad do will be sex appropriate. That's what a boy should do. So if he copies it, he will get rewarded. Okay, so but if he copies the behavior of the mom, who is seen to be feminine, okay, so he is more likely to be punished for it. So are we gonna see the role of the gender of the model, okay, in learning this aggression? So the hypothesis, the prediction is that one, observed aggressive behavior will be imitated. So if they observe an aggressive behavior, they will be imitated. So children seeing aggressive model will be more aggressive than those seeing a non-aggressive model or no model. Observe non-aggressive behavior will be imitated. So children seeing non-aggressive models will be less aggressive than those seeing no model. Okay. Children are more likely to copy a same-sex model, and boys will be more likely to copy aggression. Again, as I said, aggression is normal among boys. So if they do that behavior, they'll somehow be rewarded more than punished. Okay. So what we're gonna use here is a laboratory experiment. The environment was not the normal place where the child played, and the situation was controlled. There are three IVs. One is the model type, whether the child saw an aggressive model, a non-aggressive model, or no model. We're also gonna change the gender of the model. Okay, is it gonna be the same gender as a child? So if the participant is a boy, will the model be a boy as well, or will it be a girl? Okay, we're gonna change that. and the gender of the learner, the participant, whether they was a boy or a girl. The design is that the children were matched for aggression and then put into independent groups. So what I mean here is that I will explain this later. But in terms of independent group, so they will only either be in the aggressive model or the non-aggressive model, okay, or the no model. So they only participate in one condition of the IV. So what are we measuring here? It's the learning the child display. How do we operationalize it? It's measured through a controlled observation. So we're using observation in the study. And the measures of aggressive behaviors were recorded. Word sample, 36 boys, 36 girls, equal gender, age 3 to 6 years old from this Stanford University. So they don't go to Stanford University, guys. They go to Stanford University Nursery School. Okay. So just now I said the design was a match pair. So what does that mean? So before the experiment, children, for example, this boy, were rated for aggression by two people. One is their teacher, and two is the experimenter. Both raters assessed the children separately, okay, but what they found was that the rating that they both give were similar, and therefore we can say that it is reliable. The reliability is established. So therefore, each child has an aggressive score. Okay, now children were then allocated to an experimental group using match pairs. So they were matched for their level of aggression. Okay, so let's say this boy was rated 1 for aggression, as well as this girl was rated 1 as aggression, so they're not aggressive, so they're paired. So what happens when they're paired is, so one goes to one group, one goes to the other. Okay, and let's say this kid, look how hangry he is. So both experimenters and the teacher rated him as a 6, which is high in aggression. Okay, and this girl was rated as a 6, for example. Okay, I don't know how they rated it, but let's say they were rated as a 6. Okay, so they were both paired. So we make sure that they are not in the same group. Okay, so one goes here, one goes there. Okay, so therefore each condition had a range of level of aggression. So for example, this is one group. Okay, it has someone who is rated as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in this group, there's a variety of level of aggression, from the least aggressive to the most aggressive one is in one group. Okay, why do we do this? It would have been unfair if one condition had very aggressive children and one with a very low aggressive children. So let's say we didn't rate them. So let's say in this group, they were all the kids were the aggressive ones. They were all rated 6, let's say, for example. In these groups, they were all rated 1. Okay, obviously this will most likely to copy aggressive behaviors, not because of the model, but because that's how they are in a person. So we don't want that. Okay, so then that's an extraneous variables. So we make sure in one group it has a range of levels of aggression. Okay, not just this one group being very aggressive, this one group being very non-aggressive. We don't want that. Okay, so now there were 72, remember, 36 boys, 36 girls. Okay, 12 and boys and 12 girls were allocated to control groups here, which saw no model. So 12 boys here, 12 girls here. The remaining children were divided equally by sex between aggressive and non-aggressive model groups, and within those between the same and opposite sex models. For example, okay, so 72 divided by 4 divided by 3, 24 in each group. That's the first IV, remember, whether they saw an aggressive model or whether they saw a non-aggressive model or whether they saw no model. Okay, now let's focus on the aggressive role model. So 24 in aggressive role model, we divide them equally. 12 of them will see a male model, an aggressive male model. 12 of them will see an aggressive female model. Okay, so those who saw male model, 12 of them, 6 of them are boys, 6 of them are girls. So here these boys will observe a same-sex model. These girls will not observe the same-sex model different. They will observe a male model. Are they more likely to copy it? So let's say here, male model, aggressive. Who do you think is more likely to copy the behavior? Is it the boys or is it the girls? As we said earlier, they are more likely to imitate same sex. So these boys are more likely to imitate this aggressive behavior compared to these girls. And what about here? If it was a female model and six boys saw it, six girls saw it as well, the female model being aggressive, who are more likely to copy them? Is it the boys or is it the girls? Okay, so we will find out later. Okay, so this is the procedure. Okay, so it is they do it independently. Okay, so there were 72 trials altogether. So let's say this girl is one trial. Okay, so they're brought into three different rooms. Okay, room one is for modeling. So each child was brought individually by the experimenter to this room, and the model, who was in the hallway outside the room, was invited by the experimenter to come in and join in the game. So the model comes in together with the girl. Now, what kind of is this a same sex model or different sex model? It's different, right? So the participant is a girl, the model is a boy, a man, sorry, or maybe he's a boy, maybe he's still a kid. Okay, sorry. Where was I? Okay. Then the experimenter showed the child to a table and chair in the play area here, where they were shown how to make potato prints and they had sticker pictures, basically activities previously identified as interesting for children. So previously identified, it was interesting. I don't know if it's interesting to girls now, to children nowadays. Stickers. Okay. So the opposite corner of the room was also contained a table and a chair, which had a Tinker toy set. So this is a building set that people used to to play Dulu. Not nowadays, I don't know how. Oh, nowadays maybe Legos. Do you guys still play Lego? I don't know. Okay, so basically, okay, a Tinker toy set, a mallet, like a hammer, but it's a mallet, and a Bobo doll, the inflatable Bobo doll. Do you know how this works? So basically, usually they put sand or water here. So if you punch it here, it will come right back up. Okay, so you punch, it goes back up. Okay, I used to have this one of these. This is how I really unleash my aggression. Okay, my anger. Okay, uh, this is where the model sat in those conditions where there was one. So if it was the aggressive model condition or non-aggressive model condition, there will be a model sitting here. So if it was the control group, no model, just the kid here playing with stickers. Okay, so they spend 10 minutes here. During this time, the experimenter is in the room. Okay, because we don't want her to feel uncomfortable, scared. So the experimenter is in the room, but he makes himself busy by doing paperwork. So basically trying not to focus, pay attention to her. Okay. Okay. So what was the model doing in this 10 minutes? In the aggressive condition, at first the model assembled the Tinker Toy set, the wooden building kit, for 1 minute, and then the model attacked the Bobo doll. The doll was laid on its side, sat on, and punched in the nose, picked up and hit on the head with a mallet, tossed up in the air and kicked. This sequence was performed 3 times over 9 minutes. So it's always the same procedure, same order. Okay, this acts as a control, okay? So they did this 3 times, always in the same order, over 9 minutes, accompanied by aggressive comments such as "kick him," and 2 non-aggressive comments such as "he sure is a tough fella." Okay, so this is non-aggressive comment. This is aggressive comment. "Kick him." So they did that in that 10 minutes. In the non-aggressive condition, the whole 10 minutes, the model assembled the Tinker toys here, a wooden building kit. That's all they did, and then the child is observing that behavior, non-aggressive. In the control condition, children never saw a model in the room, therefore saw no aggression. Hey, I hate clowns. Okay, after that, what happens after the 10 minutes? Each individual was shown to a room with attractive toys. So they moved to another room, in this room there were attractive toys such as fire engine and a baby crib. But after they played for 2 minutes, after these childs played with this for 2 minutes, they were told that these were the best toys and were to be kept for other children. So they were not allowed to play with it. After playing it with it for 2 minutes, and then they said, "Sorry, this toys aren't for you. Come with me, please." Oh, look how devastated she is. Okay. But then the experimenter said, however, you could play with any of the toys that were in the next room. Okay. So then the experimenter and the subject then entered the adjoining experimental room. So they go to the third room. So what's the purpose of this room? Basically, we want to make them aggressive. We want to it's an aggression arousal phase. We try to make them angry. Okay. Okay, room 3. This is where we try to see whether they imitate the behaviors that they observe in room 1. Okay, so this is a test of the child's aggression, then followed in which child was observed for 20 minutes using a one-way mirror. So they were observed for 20 minutes. For the aggressive model group, this was a test of delayed imitation. Okay, um, do you remember the aim just now? It says, okay, whether they would reproduce this behavior that they have observed and they learned in the absence of the model. So in this room, we want to see if they will imitate the behavior that they observe from the model in the absence of the model. So here in this room, there were no model. We want to see if they reproduce it without the presence of the model. Okay, delayed imitation. So they don't imitate it at the time, so delayed. Okay, so here there was a delay where they spent a few minutes in the room 2, and then we test their imitation. Okay, this experimental room contain a 3-foot bobble. Here the bobble, remember the bobble, a mallet and a pegboard, 2 dart guns, a tether ball with a face painted on it, which hung from the ceiling. Here, this is a ball hung from a ceiling. It had a face painted on it. So why should there be a face? So they could imagine that it's a guy, it's a person. Okay. It also contains some non-aggressive toys, including a tea set, crayons, coloring paper, a ball, 2 dolls, 3 bears, cars and trucks, and plastic farm animals. These toys were always presented in the same order, so there were no toys that outshine the others in some condition. It's always the same. Okay. Yay. So who observed them? So they were observed using a one-way mirror for 20 minutes, but by who? Obviously, there were 2 people. Why were they 2 people? To achieve iterator reliability. Yes, good. Okay. So who observed them? The male model. Okay, the male model, an independent observer watch. Let's say this was a model. This was a new person who did not know whether the child was exposed to aggressive or non-aggressive model. So this is good because that would have affected his bias. So if he knew that this child was exposed to aggressive model in room 1, his view might be biased. So anything that the child does might seem aggressive to him because he knew that the child was exposed to aggressive model. Okay, so it's good that he did not know what the child's condition was. Okay, so they watched the child for 20 minutes through one-way mirror. So let's say this is the other room, this is the mirror, and there's the other room where they are observing. Okay, so they recorded categories every 5 seconds. So each this seconds, what did they do? Another 5 seconds, what did they do? Okay, so 240 observation for each child. Remember, 20 minutes divided by 5 seconds, so 240 observation for each child. Okay, what are they measuring? Okay, so 1, they are measuring imitative aggression, whether they imitate physical aggression. So these are the things that the model did. Okay, it's striking the bobo doll with a mallet, sitting on a ball, punching in the nose, kicking the doll, tossing it in the air. So if the child do the exact same thing here, that would fall under imitative physical aggression. Okay, so let's say they say sock him, hit him down, kick him, throw him in the air, or pow. These are the things the model said, okay, in aggressive condition during that room 1 thing. Okay, so if they say any of these things, that will fall under imitative verbal aggression. So because they have imitated it. Okay, and there's also imitative non-aggressive verbal response. So if he says he keeps coming back for more, which is what the model said in room 1, or he sure is a tough fella. These are the things that the model said in room 1. So if the kids say these things, that will fall under imitative non-aggressive verbal responses. Okay, there are other behaviors that they should look out for, which is partially imitative aggression. If the child imitated these behaviors incompletely, for example, mallet aggression, striking objects other than the bottle aggressively with the mallet. So what the model did was he hit the bottle with the mallet. So if they say they use the mallet to hit other things, for example, the ball that was hanging here, okay, so that's not exactly what the model did, right? But partially it's the same because they were hitting things using a mallet. So that would fall under mallet aggression. Okay, or sit on the bottle, laying the bottle on its side and sitting on it without attacking it. Okay, what the model did was he sat on the doll and punched the nose. But what if they just sit on the bottle without attacking it, just sitting on it? So that will go under partially imitative. So part of the behavior is the same as the model, except they didn't punch it in the air, they didn't attack it. So that would fall under partially imitative aggression, which falls under sit on bottle. There were two further categories, which were aggressive gunplay, shooting darts or aiming a gun and firing imaginary shot at objects in the room. Okay, so this is something that the model didn't do. Or if they show a non-imitative physical and verbal aggression. So physically aggressive acts directed towards objects other than the bobo, and any hostile remarks except for those in the verbal imitation category: shoot the bobo, cut him, stupid ball, horse. These are the things that the kids say, by the way, guys. Stupid ball, horses, fighting, biting, no cover people. Now, okay, what what happens here is that these are the aggression that they didn't imitate. That this is the aggression that they come up with themselves. So that's why it's non-imitative aggression. Okay, so this is what aggressive behavior that they didn't imitate. They come up with it with their own. Okay. Okay, finally, behavior units were also counted for non-aggressive play and sitting quietly, not playing at all, and records were kept for the children's remark about the situation. So not only that they measure the aggressive, non-aggressive responses, the aggressive physical and verbal aggression, we're also gonna check for non-aggressive play, what were the things in the room, whether they were playing a tea set, crayons. Okay, so these are non-aggressive behavior. So we will also they will also record that. Okay. Okay. Now, are you ready to look at some videos of the experiment? Okay, let me just fast forward it. Okay, wait. Sorry. So this is the model.
Model pummeled the doll with the mallet, flung it in the air, kicked it repeatedly, threw it down and beat it.
So this would fall under imitative physical aggression. So because that was what the model did, and they copied it exactly. Okay, so that would fall under imitative physical aggression. As well as here, throwing it in the air. That's what the model did as well. Kicking it. So this is imitative physical aggression. And this
It
is...
was once widely believed that seeing others vent aggression would drain the viewer's aggressive drive. As you can see, exposure to aggressive modeling is hardly cathartic.
So this is still imitative aggressive behavior.
Exposure to aggressive modeling increased attraction to guns, even though it was never modeled. Guns had less appeal to children who had no exposure to the aggressive modeling. The children also picked up the novel hostile language.
Yeah, see here, this is non-imitative physical aggression because the model didn't do it. They didn't imitate it. They came up with it on their own. Okay. I don't know if this is cute or just worrying. Here's the girl.
The room contained varied play materials, and children could choose to play aggressively or non-aggressively.
That would be non-imitative physical aggression. So her throwing a ball to the Bobo doll. Okay, so the model didn't do this. So she came up with this on her own. Okay, so this would go under non-imitative physical aggression. Look how angry she is when I bet she was in the aggressive model and then brought into the room too where she was playing. Let's imagine she was playing and then they said, "Oh, that's not for you." Oh, that I guess that's why she's really angry.
The children devised new ways of hitting the doll. Now, the object of interest was the novel aggressive acts, not punching the doll. Children in the control group who had no exposure to the aggressive modeling never exhibited the novel forms of aggression. Here's a creative embellishment. A doll becomes...
Okay, so what he said just now, kids in the control group didn't show any of this novel aggression, new aggression, something that um the something that the model didn't do. Okay, so something new, which is throwing a ball at someone. Okay, so that is something creative. So the more angry they were, the more creative were they in terms of aggressive behavior. Okay, because those in the control group which had no model, they didn't show any of this, guys. They didn't do any of this behavior.
a weapon of assault.
Okay, I hope you liked that video. Okay. Okay, are you ready for some results? Okay, let's go. Okay, children exposed to aggressive models imitated their exact behaviors and were significantly more aggressive, both physically and verbally, than those children in the non aggressive model or in control groups. These children also imitated the model's non aggressive verbal responses. For example, he sure is a tough fella. This effect was greater for boys than girls. Okay? Although boys were more likely to imitate physical aggression and girls were more likely to imitate verbal aggression. Okay? I think that's something we all know of. Okay? Girls can be mean with their words. Okay, so boys were also more likely to imitate the same sex model as to a lesser extent were girls. Okay, so let's say the boys were exposed to a female model. Okay, they were not as likely to imitate behavior compared to if they saw a male model. Okay, it's the same for girls. They were more likely to imitate the behaviors, aggressive behaviors, if the model was a female. Okay. Okay, some interesting points are that the mean for imitative physical aggression for male subject is 25.8. So that is if they saw a male model, aggressive male model. Okay, so same sex models. As you can see here, compared to when they saw a male model and a female model, they were more likely to imitate behaviors, aggressive behaviors, if they saw a same sex model. Okay, and if you look here, um, female subject 7.2. Okay, this indicates that the boys imitated the physical aggression of a male model more than the girls. Okay, however, with the female here, we would have expected that they would show more aggressive behavior if it was a female model, but if you look here, they actually showed more aggressive acts if they saw a male model. However, if you look at verbal aggression, okay, as we said here just now, girls were more likely to imitate verbal aggression, okay. If it was a female model, they were more likely to imitate the verbal aggression. Okay, what was the verbal aggression just now? Sock him, hit him down, kick him, throw him in the air, or pow. Okay, so in terms of physical aggression, they don't really imitate, um, even if it's a same-sex model. But if it was verbal aggression compared to female model and male model, it is a high number here. They imitated more of the female model's aggressive comments, such as the hit him, sock him, pow. Okay. For the male subjects, obviously, same. They still imitated. Okay. And it's higher for the same-sex model. Okay. For those who were in the non-aggressive model, okay, if you remember the second hypothesis, observed non-aggressive behavior would be higher in non-aggressive model compared to control group. Okay, so both boys and girls in the non-aggressive model engage in more non-aggressive play with dolls than either of the groups and spend more than twice as much time sitting quietly and playing. Okay, so that model was such a good role model. They were behaving non-aggressively, so they also engage in those behavior. Okay. Other observations. Records of the remarks about the aggressive models reveal differences, both between reactions to the action of the male and female models and between boys and girls. Some comments appear to be based on previous knowledge of sex type behavior, such as, "Who is a lady? That's not the way for a lady to behave. Ladies are supposed to act like ladies." Okay, so these are some of the comments when they saw that female model acting aggressively towards a bobo doll. Um, Also, they said, "You should have seen what that girl did in there. She was just acting like a man. I never saw a girl act like that before. She was punching and fighting, but no swearing." Whereas comments about the female models' behavior were disapproving, those about the male model were not. Oh, double standard. Okay, this was more likely to be seen as appropriate and approved by both boys and girls. For example, in comments such as, "Al's a good soccer. He beat up Bobo. I want to sock like Al." Okay, that man is a strong fighter. He punched and he could hit Bobo right onto the floor. And if Bobo could have got up, he said, "Punch your nose." He's a good fighter like Daddy. Okay, so see how they had different views for the models. When the females were doing it, they were commenting about it. Okay, they had issues about it. But when they saw a male model, they actually praised that male model. So do you see um how we looked at this earlier just now? So if the behavior is sex appropriate, it is more likely to be rewarded. So here, aggression is somehow seen appropriate for men, so they were rewarded for it. But for the female, they were punished. No, not they were punished. They were commented on about it. Okay, like, you shouldn't do that. Okay, because it's seen to be not appropriate behavior for girls. Okay, so what can we conclude? The results strongly suggest that observation and imitation. There should be a space here. Okay. The results strongly suggest that observation and imitation can account for the learning of specific acts without reinforcement or either the model observer. Okay. So here they were not given reinforcement if they copied the behavior, but they still did it. Okay, so it's not operant conditioning, so it's more likely social learning theory. They observed and they imitated. Okay, so all four hypotheses were supported. So observed aggressive behaviors are imitated. Children who see aggressive models are likely to be more aggressive than those seeing a non-aggressive model or no model. Observed non-aggressive behaviors are imitated. Children seeing non-aggressive models will be less aggressive than seeing no model. Okay, they will spend more time sitting down. Just now, when we look at it, where was it? Oh, here. They've spent more than twice as much time sitting quietly and not playing compared to the control group. So the control group ada lagi sedikit aggressive towards the bobo doll, okay? But the non-aggressive models, they just played non-aggressively, okay? Children are more likely to copy a same-sex model, although this may depend on the extent to which this behavior is sex-type. So if it was boys, they are more likely to imitate physical aggression, but girls, they are more likely to imitate verbal aggression of those female models. Okay, and as we can see here, boys are more likely to copy aggression than girls because it is seen to be appropriate for them. Okay, so it's a sex appropriate behavior for the boys. And the end, I think. Okay, I hope you understand the study. If you have any questions, please don't be scared to text me. I will try to reply you. I will not blue tick you. I will not ghost you. Okay. So thank you for listening. We will do evaluation when we're ready. Okay. Thank you.